she's leaving. Take their hand, Mom. Take their hand. It's okay to go. And I couldn't believe it. I just because, nothing else,
Sure.
I didn't see any light. I didn't see anything that weird, but it was that thing just slammed right up, and I knew she was leaving. I just felt it. So I stood there for a second, and I didn't know. I was too freaked out. I mean, I was like, oh my God, it worked, because I knew that my mom needed to go, and
Sure.
because she'd been in there for days. I mean, she'd been off all of her.
Right. So that's amazing, and thank you, and that fits right in with kind of the clock stopping stories you heard earlier.
Then I looked at my watch to see the time of death. And I thought, I can't look at this watch. It stopped yesterday. And I looked at the watch the clock on the wall, because I was alone with her in a nursing
Right.
end of life room, and it said 12:30. I said, wait a minute, that's just what my watch said. And I looked at my watch, and it had stopped at the exact time of death, 12:29. So I ran down the hall. I got the nurses. They came back, because I really didn't know if she died. I didn't have a heart monitor. She was on. Nothing went beep or nothing like that.
Right.
Ran down the hall, got the nurses. They came back and said, yes, she has passed. And then I still didn't even connect the watch with her until a while later. I thought, with the clock on the wall,
Right.
and I looked at my watch, and I'm like, my God, my watch has been stopped 24 hours exactly. I mean, if you look at the mathematical statistics on 1 minute every
what are
24
the odds
hours, and
exactly.
it's stopping a brand new watch the day before, but I never took it off because of all the commotion and all how distraught I was.
Evelyn, I appreciate you sharing that. It's almost like something for your sequel to this book, Dr. Peter Fenwick.
Yeah. Evelyn, that was a lovely story. Did the watch go again afterwards?
Did the watch get going again, Evelyn?
What's that?
Did the watch get going again?
No, it's never. Oh my gosh, no! I would die if it ever started. No, I keep that in a beautiful case in my living room.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that.
I think there's some lovely things about that. One thing I want to highlight, and that is that the dying do become very sensitive, and that's Evelyn's point about not having many people visit just towards the end is absolutely right. And if you are visiting, just very gentle stroking of the dying's hands gives them reassurance and tells them that you're there and everything's okay. And gentle singing is also something which is extremely good. And I also want to draw out this idea that people who have been unconscious for some time often suddenly wake up and have a lucid interval just before they die. Sometimes they can say something when they greet the visitor, or they can hold out their hands. And because we went to nursing homes, we also found that people who had a long illness with dementia sometimes suddenly became lucid and clear and recognized the family just before they die. So it's a very special time.
In chaplaincy, we call that a ministry of presence.
Lovely. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
You don't have to say a thing. Just being there and having that light touch. First-time caller line, Valerie is in Phoenix for Dr. Peter Fenwick. Valerie?
Hello, Ian. Doctor?
Hi, good evening.
My experience was a little bit different than what you're talking about. When my husband died, it was a normal day. He went to work. I was running errands. And in the afternoon, I guess my brain, my head, I just got flooded with thoughts of my husband. And I later found out that it was at the exact time that he had died. But I didn't expect anything to be wrong with him.
Right.
I didn't realize anything was wrong.
Right.
And I was just curious, how come some people, they know right away that something happened, but I didn't know. Until the doctor actually told me that he didn't make it, that he had passed away. I didn't have a clue.
Peter?
I think that this depends. Some people seem to have it much stronger than others, and I think there are all shades of it. And this is why they're called deathbed coincidences, because sometimes one could say, okay, it's just due to coincidence. Many people have thoughts about their husband, but nothing actually happens. But on this time, they did. And I think it's the gradation of it I think sometimes you do know, sometimes you don't know. And sometimes it's difficult to distinguish between just random thoughts which are going on and the actual deathbed coincidence or deathbed communication. We, in fact, have got a scale which we tried to make up to tell us whether, in fact, the experience that people had was a coincidence or whether it was a deathbed communication. The scale seems to work quite well on our data. One of the important points in it is whether, in fact, these were occurring at the time that somebody was dying or not. So I think the answer really to what you experienced is that for you, the communication didn't get through very strongly, although it was there in sort of rudimentary form.
We'll keep going with this great conversation to Richard in Fresno, California, on the wildcard line for Dr. Peter Fenwick on Coast to Coast AM. Richard?
Hi, Ian and Dr. Peter Fenwick. I want to thank you both for all you do to help people, because these kind of things are things that people really need to know about. It would really help people. But I wanted to tell you about this one particular instance that I had, an experience I had back in the late 70s. I had a dear friend whose first name was Dale. And 3 weeks before this incident, his son had died from hepatitis. And my friend also had hepatitis. And one afternoon, I just had this, I guess you'd call it a psychic experience, that Dale was in the hospital, which is about a couple miles from where I lived. And I could just see red, all over it, and felt like something was really wrong with him, and I could see this sign overhead that, flashing, about some kind of a danger or something. And I just had this intense desire to, I'm Native American, and I know things about healing and natural herbs and stuff. And so I wanted to take some cayenne over there and tried. I had the sense that he was bleeding, and I wanted to go over there and stop the bleeding with cayenne. But I knew that a hospital is not going to let you go in and put cayenne on somebody, so I didn't go. But I found out later that, in fact, he had died after they had attempted to do a biopsy on his liver. And when they cut in, the liver just started bleeding and just would not stop.
They nicked him or something. Yeah, very interesting. Richard, I think you'd find there are quite a few stories like that in the book, The Art of Dying. Let's go to Mike in Ithaca, New York on Coast to Coast AM. Mike?
Hi there, Ian. Hi, Dr. Fenwick. Your screener said I could cover two things if I did the first thing real quick. The first one is that when people are hit by lightning, even though they might be at room temperature or, warmer temperatures, they can last for hours with their vital signs gone and be resuscitated. For some reason, lightning is different than other things, so that the brain can stay alive.
I hadn't heard that. That's interesting.
The other thing I wanted to say is that one of these deathbed coincidences, when Richard Nixon was dying, he was telling his daughter he didn't want to be resuscitated, and she was arguing, insisting he get medical help, and he said no, and they had a fight, and she went out in a huff. And then she came back, and he gave her the thumbs up sign, and she took this as a sign that he was going to be all right and he'd accept medical help, and she left feeling okay. And I was hearing about this on the radio while it was happening, and I felt it was okay, and I felt I could safely take a nap. And after I'd been sleeping for a while, I had a dream that Richard Nixon came to visit me. He was flying like in a small airplane in which he was lying prone in the fuselage, sort of going to heaven. And he said to me from a loudspeaker as he went by, "Now you stay in touch with your cousin. Don't lose touch with your cousin." My cousin had worked for him, and he was a helicopter engineer. And so when I had that dream, I interpreted that as Nixon on his way to heaven. He must have died. And I woke up in a start, turned on the radio, and they announced on the radio that he had died within the last 60 seconds.
That's very interesting. Well, thank you, Mike. Mike brings up something here, and I hadn't thought about this. What about the stories of, what did you hear? What did you get in your research about people whose life passed before their eyes before they died? Did that happen?
Yes, it does. Not quite in the way that you get near-death experiences from people who are drowning.